A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Hand-picked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. Sam, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling all right, Mike. We just watched an objectively hilarious, in my opinion, objectively hilarious game of Suns basketball against the Oklahoma City Thunder. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, look, I wasn't sick. I mean, you were sick. That's why I asked you. But we take over a week off of podcasting and the Suns lose 3 games in a row. I mean, I'm not going to say it's our fault, but maybe it's your fault.
I did have one people. So yeah, for the record, people, we didn't mean to take a full week off. Mike was out of town. I will point out you were out of town last weekend. So
it's both of our faults.
We were planning on only postponing the podcast by like a day or 2. But then, of course, as soon as you finally came back to town, I was like, yeah, sorry, dude, I'm sick. I'm in health and safety protocols. We can't do this. Yeah. So, yeah, I did have someone point out to me on Twitter that as soon as I announced that the other day, the team has sort of shit the bed all week. But yeah, we're back now. Thank you, obviously, to everyone for your patience in waiting for a new episode. And I think now we are going to mostly talk today about stuff that does not concern anything that's gone on over the past week whatsoever. Because, look, the team doesn't care, right? Like, if there's any takeaway that we have from the past couple games, you can see it in the way that these guys are playing. You can take umbrage with that if you want. But I think it's pretty clear that the guys are looking forward towards the playoffs. And I think that's basically what we're going to do here too, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's kind of funny because the segment that you're going to hear later, what we're going to talk about, Sam and I, later in this podcast is we're going to break down the potential opponents that the Suns could face in the first round just by first impressions alone. And it's funny because we were planning this podcast ahead of time. This is one of the ones that we do a lot of research for. During the regular season, the doldrums of the regular season, Sam and I can just generally come onto this podcast and talk about the previous few games. As it gets closer to the playoffs, like, it just feels so pointless and meaningless, just even for us. I was already messaging you earlier saying, hey, we should start talking about the playoffs. There's 2 weeks left of the season, really less than that now. It's just a week left now. And we can shift over.
Which we have done. We have done. We had that whole episode on the playoff rotation last time. So, we have been transitioning our focus. But, yeah, to your point.
I didn't expect the team to do that. They've shifted their focus entirely, the players, to the playoffs. And look, this OKC game, I think there's 2 things. I think Suns fans tend to forget all the weird things that happen at the end of a season. Weird stuff like this, OKC without 8 of their 10 players that they normally play, beating the Suns, who are the best team in the NBA. Weird stuff like this happens at the end of an NBA season. It kind of reminds me of, I think it was the 23-win Suns, 24-win Suns beating the KD Warriors. I don't know if you remember that game, but it reminds me of that. It feels like that. It's just weird stuff happens. Teams are not as focused as they should be, underestimating their opponents. The Suns resting players, which they never do, by the way. It almost feels like karma in a way for them resting players. But yeah, I think weird stuff happens, one. And then two, these OKC guys, they're playing for their lives at this point, and they hit a lot of threes. I think
who is Olivier Sarr, and why did he have 24 points in 22 minutes off the bench? There was just,
as he was going off, I was thinking, this feels like one of those times where a general manager like James Jones is going to try to get this guy next year because he went off against the Suns. Like Olivier Sarr is going to be a Suns signing this offseason and then get cut after 3 weeks because he doesn't play like he did against the Suns. That's kind of what it felt like to me.
Yeah, it's just there because the Thunder are going to operate under the whole scorched earth policy with their roster anyway, where it's like they have 50 draft picks over the next 5 years or whatever. They can't keep all these guys, so maybe you could find some diamonds in the rough here. I don't know, but definitely weird. A quick toast before we transition over to Ife Lundberg, who did make his debut, officially making him the first Danish player in NBA history. He got a couple of shots off. Did not score, unfortunately. Nope. Final stat line, 4 minutes, 0 for 2 from the field. 1 assist. 1 assist and 1 turnover. So, yes, I'm hoping he gets another chance. Looked a little nervous. He got his legs out in front of him now, hoping that there's 4 games left. If you can just make one of those 4 games a blowout win instead of a blowout loss, or if in the last game they do the thing that they commonly do where they just rest everybody. Hopefully he gets some more chances to actually go out there and score a bucket, because I was definitely rooting. That was basically all I was rooting for in the second half. I was like,
exactly.
Chris Paul came back in the game in the fourth quarter when we were already down 18.
Yeah.
And only made it worse. We went down even further, down to 22. And at a certain point, there was 8 minutes left in the quarter. I was like, what is he doing out there? Just let the Danish kid play and let's see what can happen. They're not going to make a comeback. So hopefully some point, there's 4 games left. And what do you think? Are they going to lose out these 4 games, or are we going to get the record eventually?
They've stalled at 62 wins as if the ghost of Steve Nash is just holding them there or something. It won't let it happen. But if it does happen, Tuesday against the Lakers at home in front of the home crowd, where Devin Booker is likely going to play, I can't imagine they're going to continue. Although if they continue to rest the Suns players against bad teams, maybe the Lakers are the right team to do it. But I imagine Devin Booker is going to play that game. I imagine DeAndre Ayton's going to play. And Anthony Davis just now called that game a must win for them after saying that they could go 5-0 and then immediately losing to the Denver Nuggets. But them winning against the Lakers at home to secure the best record in Suns history is kind of a storybook ending to the season. And after that, I mean, you could arguably just rest guys for the rest of the season and lose out if it comes to it.
Mathematically eliminate the Lakers as well. On the same game would be very fun. That would be very fun.
It's just a storybook perfect ending, so I hope that does happen. But we're going to focus on the playoffs for now, because clearly the team is as well. The rest of this conversation, what you're going to hear after this, is something that Sam and I recorded before the OKC game, so some of the games back stats might be a little different now. But it's a focus on the 5 teams that the Suns could play in the NBA playoffs. I had a lot of fun recording this with you, Sam, so I think people are going to enjoy it. So we'll switch over to that right now. Okay, Sam, I wanted to start this conversation off with just recapping once again what the play-in tournament is, because I'll be honest, I couldn't remember. The Suns were the 2 seed last year, so it was actually a little more clear who they were going to play. Being the 1 seed this year, there are potentially at this point 5 teams. You could say 6 if the Nuggets were just to fall off dramatically, but I don't think that's going to happen. So 5 teams they could play, and here's the reason why. The way it works for the 1 seed is the first game is the 7 versus the 8 seed, and the winner of the 7 versus the 8 seed just plays the 2 seed. So that just goes to them. And then the 9 seed will play the 10 seed, and the winner of that will play the loser of the 7 versus 8 seed, and then the winner of that game will play the Suns. So the Suns have the sort of widest amount of opponents that they could potentially have, anywhere from the 7th seed to, at this point, the 11th seed. And yeah, that makes it a little confusing as far as you and I go, figuring out who they're going to play, right?
Yeah, for sure. There are a lot of options. Quickly, I know we are a Suns podcast and we will cover this from all Suns angles. I just want to ask you though, like, where is this year 3 of the play-in? Is it year 2 of the play-in? I can't even remember.
It's year 3 because they had it in the bubble.
It's year
the
3
bubble
because
had like
they had
a
it in the
games
bubble.
back cutoff.
Yeah. Great point. Where are we with the play-in now? Do we like it? Do we not like it? Has your opinion evolved at all?
You know, that's interesting because I don't really mind it, but everyone in the range that could potentially play in it seems to hate it.
Right. And,
so like, you know, I imagine LeBron's opinion will now change now that they're probably at best going to be the 10 seed, and maybe he doesn't want to be in the playoffs at this point, but you know, he trashed it last year. Michael Malone, the coach of the Nuggets, who could potentially slip down to the 7th seed before the end of the year, depending on how the rest of the season goes, said that he doesn't like it either. And, you know, so there's a lot of opinions on it, but I do think in this specific case, we're talking about these teams now, the Timberwolves have a pretty significant
massive
lead on the
very
Clippers
significant
here.
Very significant.
Yeah.
I think if there's any fan base that has the right to feel gypped, it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I know I carry a lot of water for the Minnesota Timberwolves in general, so you know, some people will call me a Timberwolves fan, some people call me a Clippers fan, some people call me a fan of any team that's not the Phoenix Suns as a joke, but like, just let's be very clear here. Every other 4 of the 5 teams that we're going to talk about in this segment have negative point differentials on the entire season. All of them are below 500. And then you have the Minnesota Timberwolves, who I think we're going to talk about last, who have a point differential of plus 2.9 points per game, which is higher than the 6th-seeded Denver Nuggets. It's higher than the 4th-seeded Dallas Mavericks. It's higher than, in the Eastern Conference, the 4th-seeded Philadelphia 76ers. It's almost tied with the 3rd-seeded Milwaukee Bucks. Like, the Minnesota Timberwolves have been a very good team. And the prospect that, you know, you could say, well, if they find themselves in this position and they lose the 2 straight games that would kick them out of the playoffs entirely,
they have to lose twice,
then they deserve it. You know, maybe they deserve it. But I also think it's like, if you're a Timberwolves fan right now, you're kind of thinking, well, why do we even play the fucking regular season in the first place if it's all going to come down to this? Like, it feels a little bit chaotic for the purpose of chaos and not for the good spirit of the game or the good spirit of competition anymore. It just feels a little bit silly. The disparity that we're seeing in the standings between the 7th and the 10th seed in the West this year, that we're forcing all of them to go through it regardless.
Yeah, you know, there's a case to be made against it, and I think it's a little hard even just for the 1 seed to not know who they're playing at this point, and that's a little frustrating, I think, for them as far as preparation goes. They will have time, of course, before the playoffs begin to prepare, but there's a lot of uncertainty still, even when you're the best team now. The 7th and 8th seeds do have a slight advantage, which you mentioned. Just to clarify again, they have to lose twice. So, you know, being the 7th and 8th seed rather than the 9 versus 10 does have an advantage to it, rather than before. Obviously, they would have automatically made the playoffs. But look, if the Clippers were in the 9 seed, which I guess they could be, probably won't be. It's probably going to shake out the way it currently is. And they get Paul George back, they could potentially get Kawhi Leonard back. This is exactly what the play-in is meant to help with. They have a chance to still make the playoffs as a team that, as constructed, should be better than the other teams and is only in the position they're in due to injuries. And, you know, Lakers fans could make the same case. I don't think it's necessarily true for the Lakers, but they've had players that missed a lot of time, whether it be LeBron James or Anthony Davis. Their best players had missed a lot of time this year. So, you know, there is advantages and disadvantages to it. And I think the only team that could feel slighted is the Minnesota Timberwolves. But at this point, they have to take that energy with them into those games and, you know, win first. And then they play the 7th seed. And I don't know, I don't know who they would rather play. I guess it doesn't really matter for them. And we'll break it down, actually.
I guess I just wonder, and we can get into the teams right after this, but I guess I just wonder what the ratings are going to be for these games, because you're right, the competition is going to be elevated. They're going to go in with a fiery spirit knowing that these are do or die games. But like it's still a Minnesota market versus the Los Angeles Clippers, who are the little brother of the city of Los Angeles. And I just wonder if the small ratings boost will be worth it. Worth like the argument of, are you sacrificing the product or not necessarily the product, but are you sacrificing trust here between the teams? I guess you could say everyone agreed to these rules. They all knew what the situation was going to be. And look, Mike, that's very easy to say when you're the Phoenix Suns, for example, and you're the first seed in the Western Conference. But I guarantee you, any team, like no one's gonna defend really the position that a team like the Timberwolves are in right now until one day they find themselves in that same position. And anyone in that same position is going to bitch about it because it just seems pretty unfair. So
Yeah. Look, I mean, there's two things. Of course, they're going to make money from ratings. But the other part is the Clippers and the Pelicans in particular, and maybe to some extent the Spurs, could have tanked this year. You know, the Pelicans with no Zion, maybe they don't make that CJ trade. Maybe they're content being in the lottery with like really high lottery odds. And same with the Clippers. The Clippers lose both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Oh, maybe they sit out the rest of the season. Paul George doesn't come back with 15 or so games left, and they just try and tank. And that's something that didn't happen this year due to the way that it was currently constructed. So as far as the problems that it was attempting to solve, I think it's doing a pretty good job of that, at least so far. We're going to break down all 5 of these teams. I'm going to repeat them. Minnesota Timberwolves, who are in the 7th seed. Los Angeles Clippers, who are in the 8th seed. New Orleans Pelicans, 9th seed. San Antonio Spurs, 10th seed. And the Los Angeles Lakers, who I believe just now lost, we're recording this Sunday afternoon, to the Denver Nuggets, who are now firmly in the 11th seed.
By the way.
And we're going to break down each of those teams, yes.
There's a certain brand of Suns fan that's listening to the episode still at this point who's thinking something along the lines of, why does it matter? The Suns are going to wash anyone they play in the first round anyway. And if you're that type of Suns fan, I would say that, like, it gets like you should know what the deal is with this podcast right now. First of all, that we nerd out about things that maybe aren't the most consequential in the world.
But we record twice a week.
Well, no. We record
twice a week.
Hold on. We record twice a week, but we save the good stuff for this episode. We save the shitty stuff for the Patreon, if we're being entirely honest. But also beyond that, it would be like, don't most of you think it would be pretty fucking boring if we just came on every week and told you about how good the Suns are? Like, and that's all we did.
It's like
like everyone knows how fucking good the Suns are at this point. You know, they're an awesome basketball team, but it's like, you know, the purpose of this conversation that we're about to have, I just want to frame it in the appropriate way, is not that any of these teams are necessarily like going to be favored against the Suns in the first round. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. But you should be interested not in just the end result, which is obviously to win a championship, but also in the journey to get there. If you're not having fun with the journey to get there, then I don't really understand why you're a sports fan to begin with. So I think we're talking about some fun outcomes here that could possibly happen, and some fun ways, even if it's only to get to the second round. Just there's a lot of interesting narratives that you could pull out of any of these series. And we're guaranteed to see one of the 5. So we're going to break it down a little bit.
Yeah. We don't do predictions on this podcast, in that we don't predict who's going to win, stuff like that. We make guesses. We estimate on how things are going to turn out. We never made predictions in the playoffs last year until the finals, and then, of course, that ended badly, so I'm not going to do that this year. It was pulled out of us by our friends at the Eurostep podcast, but we're not going to make predictions this year either necessarily, but we will talk about each of these teams individually and how they could stack up. But the reason we don't make predictions is because the fun of the sport is its ability to remain unpredictable. And that means, although I do believe the Suns are favored against all of these teams, anything could happen, and I think we should talk about individually quickly. Of course, we're not going to have time. Once we know who the Suns are going to play, we'll have a playoff preview. We'll spend an hour talking about strategies to play those teams. But for now, we'll go through each one and just quickly talk about our first impression of each of these and how the Suns stack up against them. Let's talk about the Lakers first. By the way, the Lakers 11 seed, let me just read this record to you. 31-47. It's kind of crazy to read that record out loud. I believe they are now 31.5 games back of the Phoenix Suns, which is just insane. Since the All-Star break, this is another insane record. Since the All-Star break, they're 5-16, which is just horrible.
They're 28th in the NBA in net rating since the All-Star break.
Yeah. 28th in the NBA in net rating since the All-Star break, and the Suns are 3-0 against the Lakers so far this season, and they do play them one more time before the end of the season. Anthony Davis, before this Denver Nuggets game that the Lakers just lost, just said that he thinks the Lakers could win the 5 games they have remaining for the rest of the season, go on a 5-game win streak, and then they immediately lost. Anthony Davis should not be allowed to talk about things that will happen to the Lakers. If you're a Lakers fan, I would suggest not encouraging him to not speak because things go badly after he does. Obvious questions with the Lakers. Who's healthy? If they're all healthy, obviously you do have 3 stars. You have LeBron James, you have Anthony Davis, and you have whatever Russell Westbrook is now. You can make the case that he's not a star anymore. I understand that case, and I kind of buy it as well. I guess you could make the case the same about LeBron James, but what's your first thoughts when thinking about potentially matching up against the Lakers in the first round?
Yeah, this one's easy. I know you wanted to go in the order of worst record to best record, but it's just like I can't bring myself to take this team seriously. These other 4 teams, I can bring myself to take them seriously. The Lakers, with the way they're playing, even at full health, I do not take them seriously. I'm sorry. I don't think this would be anything resembling a close series whatsoever. That's where we're at with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
I think we'd be smoking that Lakers pack, and Twitter would have a lot of fun, and that's just the end of the day. What's your initial impression on how we would match up here?
Well, I could see myself making some if Kendrick Nunn was healthy jokes, for one.
Yeah,
I think that's an obvious one that I would be able to make. But yeah, my first impression is pretty similar. I guess the way I would phrase it is this the team that we would want? Because I guess you could make the case for a couple of these other teams here too. But the Lakers, by all metrics, are the worst of this group by like a large margin, by all metrics. And now you could make the case that they're almost trying to not make the playoffs at this point, right? They're just really just trying to lose just to end this horrible season and move on to next season. Who knows what they do in this offseason? But, I don't know. The refs will probably still be on their side a little bit. They do still have LeBron James. They are still the Los Angeles Lakers. And they do have Anthony Davis. As far as DeAndre Ayton and how well he did against Anthony Davis, I would say that when it comes to the bigs in the playoffs, outside of Giannis, Anthony Davis probably played against DeAndre Ayton the best. Now, that's hard to say that he'll be even healthy for the length of an entire series, healthy by the time the playoffs come, whatever it takes. But obviously the Suns would be majorly favored in this. But those are the first things that come to my mind. First of all, will it be a sweep? I don't think it will. I think the Lakers could steal one.
I think it might be.
I think it could be. I just think with free throws, I think there's a chance there's a game where...
Yeah, for sure.
I just have this flashback in my mind of Anthony Davis shooting 17 free throws in the first round last year.
I think it's funny.
And I can see that happening again.
I guess I think it's funny that people sort of hold up Anthony Davis as the savior of the Lakers, and Lakers fans especially fall back on his health, because Anthony Davis has played, I think, 38 games this season, or 36 or something like that. And even in those games, most of which were with LeBron, the Lakers are still under 500. I looked that up today and was surprised to see it, because I felt like I had been misled by this narrative that all the Lakers needed was Anthony Davis and they would be fine. When they have Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook has played in all of those games, and LeBron James has played in 3/4 of them, they're still under 500. There's no saving this team at this point. You asked me to write down an X factor for each of these, so I did. I jotted down what I thought would be an X factor in each series. And for this one, I put, what dance moves will Jay Crowder pull out in... to close out the series against the Lakers, because I just couldn't think of something. Yeah. I don't take this team seriously. I don't. They don't deserve it.
Mine was the refs. Tony Brothers, I guess you could say, is the X factor in my mind. Scott Foster is the X factor in my mind as far as just winning a game. So, yeah, let's move on, because here's the reality of the Lakers. At this point, they just lost another game right before we started recording this. They're probably out of it at this point. I mean, we're really most likely talking about the 4 potential teams being the Wolves, the Clippers, the Pelicans, and the Spurs.
Our friends,
those are the real most likely ones.
Friends of the pod, JJ Redick, would be mad that we even wasted this much time considering the possibility of the Lakers in the playoffs at this
Cameron
point.
Payne would be pissed.
Yeah, he would. So let's move on. Who's next?
Spurs.
Okay.
The Spurs, let's talk about them. This is the team that I may have the least amount of notes. Sorry to give away the bank here, but 32-45. 32-45.
All right, that's it.
Right
that's
now.
all he's got. Let's move on to the...
They're 30 games back. They're 10-9. They actually technically have a winning record Not every team has a winning record. The Lakers don't, and another team doesn't. We'll talk about in a minute. 10-9 since the All-Star break. And let's see, 18th in net rating since the All-Star break. The Suns are 4-0 against the Spurs so far this season. They've played them 4 times. That's the entirety of which they will play them. And they've won every single game pretty decisively at times. I mean, as far as the four teams that you could potentially go against, I think you could make the case that this is the one that you should want the most if you're the Suns.
I agree.
Yeah?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I just don't see how they match up well against the Suns at all. The Suns have advantages all over the place. They have guys that could defend Devin Booker and Chris Paul potentially, but they got rid of one of them in Derek White. They probably shouldn't have done that. And yeah, I don't know. It's just they don't scare me that much.
They've got something though, and I think that's what's been interesting about the Spurs recently. I think despite the All-Star appearance this year, I still don't think people, just the casual NBA fan, realizes just how fucking good DeJounte Murray has been. And I think getting him, getting him in the playoffs would be kind of fun just for that reason. A full series, his playoff debut. But yeah, there's too much of a talent shortfall here, especially when you consider them compared to the next 3 teams that we're going to talk about. They've got DeJounte Murray, a 20-point-per-game scorer, but beyond that, like he takes by far the most shots on that team. After that, they've got young wings and Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell, but they're not, Jakob Poeltl as well as like a really good short roll playmaker, but they don't really have even like a reliable second guy. I guess you could call Keldon Johnson that as like a 15-point-per-game score, but I just don't see it. I think they're going to look way too unseasoned against a team like Phoenix that's just going to blow them out of the water with experience, ultimately.
Yes. Since the All-Star break, they're 16th in defense and 15th in offense. I mean, these are not numbers that stand out as a team that should scare you. I mean, and it's hard to really figure out how they've gotten to where they are. I mean, obviously their record is not overall that impressive, so when you're talking about a potential playoff team, you're usually not talking about a team that's 13 games under 500 at this point. But that because of the play-in, they're still in the mix, and all they do have to win 2 games, right? These next 2 teams that we're going to talk about have to win 2 games in order to play the Phoenix Suns, and I don't know. I wouldn't put a lot of faith in them. It's absolutely possible. That's the thing about the play-in game. So I wouldn't put a lot of faith in them, right? I wouldn't bet on them.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing about Pop too.
Right.
Honestly, like, the Spurs always just feel like a team that, they could win 2 games and shock you NCAA style. But the talent on paper, this team is not that good. So I guess that's what we can say in favor of the Spurs is on paper, they're just not that good. They've got a lot of young players and they'll probably look a lot better in another year or 2. Like Devin Vassell, is right. He's right on time with regard to his development sort of timeline. He's right where you'd want him to be in year 2 of his rookie contract, averaging like 12 and 5, good 3-point shooter, switchable defender. It's like exactly what you wanted him to be. Keldon Johnson maybe didn't take exactly the leap that people wanted after he's
22
after he was on the Olympic team, but that's right. Great point. He's 22 years old. So, they're right on time with in terms of their development. They're just not ready. Now, however, I will say
it's a really young team.
From a basketball standpoint, I think what's interesting about this team, they're 4th in pace. They're 1st in the NBA in 2-point attempts. They've got the switchable wings who can, kind of try to keep you honest with corner and wing threes, but they don't take a lot of threes. In all honesty, it's not their main game. So they're going to push the pace behind Murray. And try and put pressure on the rim. The thing is, the Suns are an amazing transition defense team. So if that's your main mode as a system of getting offense, I don't believe that that's really going to work in a playoff setting against the Suns. I think, if you're trying to push after misses from the Suns, which first of all, there aren't going to be that many in the first place, and try and generate all of your offense in transition, it's going to be tough for you to beat that. You might be able to beat this team once or twice. You're not going to beat them 4 times out of 7. And then on the other end, also just Murray being the non-shooter that he is, puts great pressure on the rim, gets a lot of downhill acceleration, and creates a ton of assists that way as well. But this is probably one of the only potential matchups here that I think you could just kind of stay in a drop, and you'd be fine.
You might have to play a little higher on the drop because they do tend to make mid-range shots. A lot of the Suns, the way the Suns play defense, is forcing teams to hit the mid-range shots that they don't want to make. The Spurs are okay taking those shots, and that's their game plan a lot of times. So you might have to play a little higher on that drop, but it's not the type of like dramatic scheme change that it would take to beat some of the other teams later in the playoffs. Like, for example, either the Memphis Grizzlies or the Golden State Warriors. The Suns would have to change a lot of the stuff they regularly do to fight them, whereas with the Spurs, they're just minor tweaks, and I think the Suns can get out of that pretty easily. I will say that there is like a chance that, you know, somebody like Doug McDermott could go off and hit
Yeah.
10 threes in a game. Or
Oh,
whatever.
I could totally
But, like,
see there being...
Doug McDermott hasn't played like the last 15 games or so. I'm not sure what exactly is going on. I could probably find it, but I'm guessing an injury, which is not great for them as far as this goes. Out for the season with an ankle injury. He'll miss the rest of the season with a grade 3 ankle sprain, according to Jeff McDonald of the San Antonio Express-News.
Yeah, I did not know he
This
was
was
out for the
updated
season.
last on March 16th. So grade 3 ankle sprain is a bad ankle sprain. That's a high ankle sprain. If he does come back, he's not going to come back at 100%, most likely at that point. So like the biggest threat as far as offensively, who can just catch fire and kill you, is probably Doug McDermott. This is no disrespect to the players on this team, because I think you're right that DeJounte Murray is extremely good, and we could see if the Suns play them for 5 games or 6 games, whatever it takes, we could see 5 or 6 triple-doubles from him. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I just think that they probably don't really have the experience and the continuity to beat the Suns overall. And yeah, like I said, out of these 4 teams, I think the Suns would luck out if they end up playing the Spurs.
Yep. Agreed.
I guess that's really where I fall on this.
I think that would be a relatively easy first-round series where you hope to make it out in 5 and then get a little bit of rest while you wait to see who you play next. That would be, I mean, that's not a firm prediction, but I think that's like, that you're talking about a lighter series, not a series that goes to 6 or 7 per se.
Right. This next team I think this will be an interesting conversation, because I know you looked at the numbers since the All-Star break like I did. The New Orleans Pelicans, 34-43 is their current record. They're 28 games back from the Suns right now. And they are 11-8 since the All-Star break. Not an overly impressive record, but a winning record. Here's the more impressive thing. 4th in net rating.
Yeah.
Since the All-Star break. The Suns are 3-1 against them, and their one loss came after the CJ trade.
I had no idea about this, by the way. I had no, because I think I had only looked at the record. And, at some point I noticed, and I was like, oh, the Pelicans are playing pretty good basketball lately. That makes sense. They have CJ now. But the net rating part of it, I had no idea.
Yeah, when they win, they can blow teams out. They can really blow teams out because they have some smart defensive players. Herb Jones, we love him on this podcast. We haven't talked about him a lot. I know we talked about him a lot when we did a playback with the Pelicans, but he's a really great defender and a really good player. And then I think as much as I've sort of trashed on CJ in the past, that was more, I think, related to my lack of faith in the Portland Trail Blazers overall. When CJ was traded to a team with Willie Green clearly understands the offense that the Suns ran. He was part of this team last year on their run to the finals. I don't know that there's a better coach to properly maximize the skill set that CJ McCollum has than Willie Green.
Okay, hold on. Your prior comments were definitely about the offensive ceiling of CJ McCollum, the player, though. Which I'm not even going after necessarily, because I think those comments were reasonable, but I don't think it was just about the Portland system. Yeah.
Well, here's what I'll say. I never believed that CJ could be the proper number 2 that it would take for Damian Lillard to win an NBA title. Yeah. And that was true.
It is true.
That was true. Having said that, still, Willie Green and his ability to maximize players that can shoot mid-range shots the way the Suns do is a perfect fit for CJ McCollum. And I think that's why he's done so well on this team. If you look at the difference in shot profile for CJ McCollum, once he got to the Pelicans from the Trailblazers, he was essentially just assigned to shoot as many threes as possible on the Trailblazers. Now, he'll shoot a lot of threes on the Pelicans, but he's doing a lot more in pick and rolls. He's doing a lot more in mid-range. He's doing a lot more setting teammates up. It just makes a lot more sense for him than playing off of another guard. And if they bring Zion into that mix, which it seems like is not going to happen, because this is probably the number one question with this team if going into the playoffs. Will Zion be back? Will he look like if he's back? It seems like he won't be back. Mm-hmm. And like the people that are pretty well connected seem to think he won't be back. But he could. I don't think we really know. I don't think we really know much about Zion. I think
but I'm not worried about it.
He started playing 5-on-5 recently in practice, which is a step in the right direction. I'm not sure that bringing in a player of Zion's caliber and what he needs in order to be effective on the court right before the playoffs would be a smart move for the Pelicans anyway. Like, you could make the case that it's going to take a little more time to integrate somebody like Zion into a team that's essentially a drastically different team than last year with a different coach, different system overall. But yeah, let me let you talk here. I kind of ranted about the Pelicans.
No, that's all right.
What do you think about the Pelicans?
Well, first thing I want to address the CJ bit that you were talking about. Since he's joined the Pelicans on long twos, which are twos that are at least 16 feet out, 16 feet to the 3-point line, CJ is shooting 58%, which is like, that might not sound that crazy. That's unfathomably good for people who don't, like, most players shoot like 36% out there, and that's a good percentage. Like, if you're shooting slightly better than league average on 3-point shots, but from 18 feet, that's a good percentage. CJ 58% in the game since he's joined the Pelicans.
Absurd.
I don't know exactly what the sample size is there. I know it's not, huge. It's probably like 30 or 40 or 50 shots or something.
I'll tell you this.
It's crazy.
It's
though.
probably like 75% off the dribble or more.
Yeah. It's
they're not easy to guard.
That's insane. About the Zion thing, I'm not losing sleep over it. I don't think anyone should lose sleep over it. However, Zion or no Zion, the problem with the New Orleans Pelicans is a physicality problem. And I think that's what's kind of interesting about this team. Like, Jackson Hayes has been starting a power forward now for them for about 20 games. I don't think Jackson Hayes posed necessarily an issue for the Suns the last time they played. The Suns beat this team a few weeks ago when they played, and I think that was the only time they played this season when they were doing what they're currently doing with Hayes at power forward and Valanciunas at center. But from a general scheme standpoint, the Pelicans are third in the NBA, this team, in offensive rebounding. Rebounding has kind of been the thing recently for the Suns.
Exactly.
It's kind of been the crux. And yeah, it's interesting. It's just interesting because, like, I'll put it this way. I wrote down here, I didn't want to scapegoat Ayton here because I think too often when we talk about rebounding with this team, look, Ayton has good games from an effort standpoint and he has bad games from an effort standpoint. And I definitely think a full series of him asking him to be as physical as Jonas Valanciunas is going to be tough. I think Valanciunas is a guy he's struggled with in the past who just kind of has his number in terms of getting offensive rebounds and stuff like that. It's like the Steven Adams matchup with Memphis, which we won't talk about today, but could be very important as well. But I think too often people scapegoat only DeAndre Ayton when we talk about the rebounding conversation. I've got written down as the X factor, it's the other guys. It's Mikal Bridges, it's Cam Johnson, it's the guys who are going to be going against a guy like Jackson Hayes. And, really, it's not just Hayes either. Brandon Ingram is big for a small forward.
Long arms.
Herb
too.
Jones is 6'8", and he's going to be like, I don't even know. I actually don't even know exactly who is the shooting guard and who is the small forward between Herb Jones and Brandon Ingram in the current lineup.
Right.
But the point is, you've got CJ as the lead ball handler, Devontae Graham backing him up, and then a bunch of big fucking dudes. It's kind of like the Toronto system.
Yeah, exactly. Length, strength, they got lots of it.
So if you've got a guy like Mikal Bridges who's averaging 4 rebounds per 36 this season, you've got a guy like Cam Johnson who's averaging 5 rebounds per 36 this season. These are not good rebounders. And furthermore, these are not good rebounders who are going to be playing, especially in Mikal's case, like 35 plus minutes in a playoff series.
Yeah.
It's a problem. I definitely think they are also, like the Spurs, facing a pretty significant shortfall in terms of I just think there's a gap in late game execution and poise between CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram, who no doubt are good, talented offensive players, but there is a gap between them and Chris Paul and Devin Booker. I do believe in that. But sometimes that gap doesn't matter so much if, one team is able to collect 10 more offensive rebounds per game. And this is one of those series where you're in danger of that for sure.
I would say out of the 4 teams, if we're just eliminating the Lakers from the conversation at this point, Pelicans are pretty high up as one of the teams I would not want to play. Like maybe 1 or 2 here, and they might be tied with the Clippers. I'll just say it right now, as far as a team that I wouldn't want to play. I just think they're playing really well right now, and I think that you can't really underestimate them. They could easily steal game 1, for example, and then the Suns are starting from a position of being behind, losing home court advantage. I could absolutely see that. It's hard to predict teams that have not been together. I think the real test for them will be, is their defensive rating real? Because right now, their defensive rating since the All-Star break is 7th, I believe. And that just seems, I don't know, it just seems unsustainable for them. And, it's credit to them for I mean, really, Willie Green. I truly believe Willie Green has done a really great job with this team ever since they got CJ McCollum, and they could actually run some really interesting offensive sets. And I think once they have Zion back, whether it be this year or next year, I think that's going to be a fascinating team.
Herb Jones.
If CJ continues to play at this rate.
Herb Jones, I know Suns fans don't like to hear it because there was that weird like kind of comparison between Herb Jones and Mikal Bridges early in the season that some Pelicans fan made. Well, I'll just say he's going to frustrate the shit out of Devin Booker in a series. No doubt. He's going to be the guy checking him. And
Booker did kill him in that last game, though.
Yeah, no, he's definitely capable of it. But he's going to frustrate him, and it's going to be like it's going to be a playoff style war of inches. It's going to be let's pressure these guys and make sure that they have to waste 5 or 6 additional seconds before they can get into the offensive set that they'd like to get into, and then boom, the play's busted and you have to revert to an ISO. That's all playoff basketball is.
Absolutely.
And with a team like this, if you have a point of attack defender as talented as Herb Jones, there's going to be a lot of that. So that's always a worry, and that's always a sign also that other guys got to step up. That's why I've got Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson. I think a Pelican series would be their series because they have to lessen the burden essentially and prove why the Suns have this reputation for being such a deep team. It needs to be an earned reputation, and they need to prove it in a series like this.
Yeah, I think the question of who guards Devin Booker is an interesting question for all of these teams. The Lakers are sort of out of that as far as what makes it interesting about them because they just have nobody. They just have nobody. I think it's pretty clear with the Spurs it's probably going to be a combination of Keldon Johnson and DeJounte Murray. And with the Pelicans, it's just Herb. He's going to guard Devin Booker. And it's going to be Jones the whole game. And how Devin Booker responds to that will have a lot to do with how long that series is, I think. And, that's what makes it fascinating. Look, if they're able to shoot a significantly worse percentage than the Suns and still win a game or two, that's a bad sign. Like, you don't want to get late into a series and give a team a ton of confidence. Yeah.
I hate games like that. Those are like the dreaded games. In the current era of Suns basketball, which has been so good, there are sometimes these teams that come along and they shoot like 30% from deep, but they still steal a game because they just grab 20 offensive rebounds, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
Those are the teams that I don't want to play in the playoffs because some of them are out there.
Well, we got a team next that probably won't do that, I would guess. In the Los Angeles Clippers, I mean, arguably probably are the best team of this group now that they have Paul George back. 38-40. The record that they have currently being 38-40 is just insanely impressive. Like, insanely impressive for a team that was missing its 2 best players for the majority of the season. They're 24.5 games back from the Suns. 9-9 since All-Star break is the Los Angeles Clippers. The Suns are 2-1 against the Clippers so far this season. Since the All-Star break, they've been playing actually kind of badly compared to previously. They're 19th in net rating. Keep in mind, all of that goes out the window.
And why is that, Mike?
Now that they have Paul George.
Because none of those 3 games were with Paul George.
None of those 3 games were with Paul George. The 19th in net rating maybe has 3 or 4 games with Paul George.
Now, I will point out, does this surprise you? Because it surprised me a little bit. The Clippers are 23-27 without Paul George this season. And obviously, if it's without Paul George, it means without Paul George and Kawhi Leonard because Kawhi hasn't played.
Yeah.
They're 15-13 with him. That, like, obviously that's a difference. Like, that is an indication that if Paul George was fully healthy this year, maybe the Clippers would be more in maybe they'd be more in Dallas, Denver territory at best, rather than where they are. But it's not an indication, like, it's not like they were on pace to be a 54-win team just because they had Paul George. They haven't been that good with him either. They are better, but I think it's, food for thought.
Yeah, that's a relatively large sample size too. It's not incredibly small. I think with the Clippers, the questions that come up automatically upon first impression of them is how often do they go small? And is Kawhi healthy? Is going to be another one. It seems like people are saying that Kawhi is not coming back. There are the spy footage of him shooting shots at the arena before games or whatever that is, but it seems like people are saying he's just going to wait till next season. But they kept the door open, right? This team didn't tank. They traded and got better this season, and will they go small? I think here's a question I want to ask, since we were just talking about it with the last 2 teams. Who guards Devin Booker now for this team?
In their normal lineup, or because I have it written down here. What's their switchiest lineup? Like, what's their small lineup?
Let's look.
I would
the
go with
actual roster.
I could tell
here.
you what I would go.
It's
with.
obviously Paul George. You obviously got him.
Yep, Paul George.
Terrence Mann, probably. Or are you not including Terrence Mann in this? Okay, Terrence
No,
Mann,
I think
Paul
so.
George.
Yep.
Reggie Jackson. I mean, long arms.
I don't think so.
So you gotta have Reggie Jackson
maybe.
in there.
I'm not sure. And here's the hint, by the way. I haven't watched enough Clippers basketball to know exactly when they go fully small what the go-to lineup is. I wrote it down as Terrence Mann, Paul George, Covington, Batum, Morris as your front court.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah,
Which is
and
a
just
front
take
court-
Reggie Jackson out of there. Yeah,
Like an entire rotation of guys who have 7-foot wingspans. But Reggie
Right.
Jackson's penetration is not there, and maybe that hurts you. So you know, if you want to replace one of those guys with Reggie Jackson, I could get behind that too. I'm just not sure exactly what the death lineup, so to speak, for LA is supposed to be. I guess in a lineup like that, it doesn't really matter who checks Booker. In the starting lineup, who checks Booker?
because they're just going to switch everything. Right.
In the starting lineup, who checks Booker is going to be, I don't know, who do you think it's going to be?
I don't know. I'm really fascinated. 'Cause
Terrence
I don't
Mann?
think they're going to want to. It's probably going to be Terrence Mann. I think that's probably
Maybe Paul
I mean,
George
It could be Reggie.
takes. I could see Paul George.
I don't think it's going to be Paul George. That's the one thing that I don't think is going to happen now. And here's why I would say that. I just don't think they're going to want to wear him out like that. I think it would be a fascinating thing and probably an advantage for the Suns over the course of a series if Paul George is guarding Devin Booker, just with the amount of work that will cause him to do. But you're right about the one thing that they're probably going to switch a lot, so maybe it doesn't matter ultimately. But I do think when I think about the Clippers last season, I think about a team that had absolutely no answer for Devin Booker to start until his nose was broken. And then Patrick Beverley chasing him around is what got him to slow down a little bit. And that's where the Clippers actually found a way back into the series. They no longer have that, right? There is no Patrick Beverley on this team anymore. And I think you could make the case that Devin Booker could have an insane series against this team without Patrick Beverley chasing him around, one of the smarter defenders.
Yep.
And that their defense got worse without him. And as much as switching has bothered the Suns in the past, two of Devin Booker's best games in the playoffs came in Game 1 without Chris Paul against this team, and then before his nose was broken in Game 2. He was just killing them. And I'm just not sure exactly what will happen there.
Not to mention, I don't even think the switching is as much about Devin Booker at this point as it's about DeAndre Ayton. And we have so much faith in, like, if you're going to put Mark,
he's the X factor.
He's the
right?
I wrote him down as the X factor. I don't think it's anyone else by a mile.
It has to be,
because if you get a switch for DeAndre Ayton shooting hook shots over it could be Marcus Morris, could be Robert Covington, could be Nick Batum,
Terrence Mann.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
No matter who it is, that's a 70%
Paul
shot.
George, yeah.
That's a 70% shot against any of those guys. And if you spam it 4 or 5 times, we know the Suns offense, they don't typically spam things exactly. They run through the flow of their offense, and then wherever the ball goes, it goes. But that's instant offense in a series against the Clippers.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
I'll put it this way, Zubats doesn't scare me.
He's been good.
He's been good, but
Yeah.
he doesn't scare you as the starting center matchup. And if you go,
Even Hardenstein's been good.
yeah, he's been good. Look, they're in the playoffs for a reason. These are good players, but
I just
but
think
they're
it's
not
interesting.
They're not
like,
great players.
Will they go to those big guys and then just force them to be in 100 pick and rolls a game against Devin Booker and Chris Paul? Because ultimately, this is the playoffs, right? The Suns don't just do things to do things. They are going to relentlessly attack any weakness by the other team over and over and over again until they're forced to adjust.
I feel
so.
Yeah,
If DeAndre Ayton starts killing them on switches and they put Zubats in or they put Hartenstein in, then now Hartenstein and Zubats are in 100 pick and rolls, and they're going to have to guard Chris Paul in the mid-range, and they're going to have to guard Devin Booker going to the rim. And it's just, I think that as much as this Clippers team scares me, I think when I was going through this earlier, I think that I am less scared after thinking through it and thinking about the prospect of this team without Patrick Beverley than I was previously. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
would also
that.
definitely be different. By the way, I don't know Norm Powell's timeline. Is he done for sure? He's played 3 games with them, with a toe injury. But it would definitely be different if you had that additional scoring threat. Norm Powell is just another guy who can heat up, who you
it's
can
just
trust.
still indefinitely.
Yeah.
Is his current status as of February 13th.
Here's what I'll say about the Clippers: the word "scare" should not come in there unless Kawhi Leonard comes back. If Kawhi Leonard comes back, all bets are off, and that's the one thing about that team where they're so tight-lipped. You just don't know if like low key that guy's getting ready for a return. That would be scary. Otherwise, it's a talent gap. It's a big talent gap. But I will tell you one thing about the Clippers. I guarantee you, Suns fans should not forget Paul George. Here are his averages in the conference finals last year. He averaged 29 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. I guarantee you two things. There's going to be at least one game, but let's say just one game, where Paul George is going to score like 40 points, and he's going to have immaculate shot making, and there's just nothing you can do, and he's going to...
You're not sweeping this team.
You're not sweeping this team. There's going to be at least one Paul George game where you give it your best, and he shoots the lights out, and okay, hats off to him. And there's also going to be one game, again, at least one game, but maybe just one game, where Ty Lue outcoaches Monty Williams. I'm going to say that. There's going to be one...
He's a genius.
He's a great coach. He makes fantastic adjustments. That's not to say that Monty will have a bad series, but there's going to be one game where Ty Lue steals it with some sort of wonky bullshit. He throws the Suns off with some sort of defensive zone that they're not expecting, or he makes the right rotations and it just clicks.
Right.
That right there, I'm giving the Clippers, at worst, I think you get out of the series and you win 4-2. But I don't think you're beating this team in 4 or 5. I think they're just too formidable for that. They're not scary though, in that they should be favored to win the series or anything.
You're right. Unless Kawhi's back, exactly. And then Kawhi would have to be pretty healthy to make that entirely scary. But yeah, I think that team, look, I mean, by all metrics, I'll say it again, the Pelicans are playing better than them, technically, but we just don't have enough of a sample size to know what they're going to look like with Paul George once the playoffs begin. But I do think their defense is going to struggle to guard the Suns in a way that I don't think they did last year. I think the Suns are better suited to face this team this year, and the Clippers are worse off to face the Suns this year. Last team, do you have anything else for the Clippers?
Nope, all set.
Okay. The Minnesota Timberwolves, who are the 7th seed, have an impressive record of 44-34, 18.5 games back from the Suns currently, 13-7 since All-Star break. The Suns are 3-0 against the Timberwolves this season, but the Timberwolves have the 5th best net rating since the All-Star break.
3-0 with 3 close wins. I would caution
3-0 with 3 close wins, but
I remember,
in no way
I remember every single one of those.
They feel
games.
out of reach.
No.
Yeah. We've talked about rebounding a lot as far as it being a potential Achilles heel for the Suns. Out of these 5 teams, the Pelicans and the Timberwolves are the 2 teams that could possibly take advantage of offensive rebounding against the Suns, I think. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
What stands out to you besides that, or if you want to expand on that
about
the Timberwolves?
I actually didn't write about that, but I think that's a good point. I just didn't write about it. I think what's interesting about the Timberwolves, so first of all, here is another team, they're top 5 in net rating since the All-Star break. So you've got another team that's been clicking at the right time, right? I think they've fallen off a little bit more recently, but remember they had that, they were tied with the Suns at one point for the longest win streak in the NBA. So there's that. They're a good team. I think what's interesting about the Timberwolves from the way they play basketball is they are by far one of the most aggressive pick and roll defenses in the NBA. And I think that's what people don't realize when they talk about Karl Anthony Towns as a defender these days. They don't realize just how often he's playing at the level of the screen. They don't realize that the Timberwolves are willing to do really weird things like they did in their last game against the Suns. And this was something we disagreed on a little bit, actually, but it was a really interesting, I think you have to at least admit, sidestep move.
I'm glad you remembered this. I forgot about it.
Yes, where their strategy was they put Karl Anthony Towns on Jay Crowder, and they put Jared Vanderbilt, who's their starting power forward, on DeAndre Ayton. So that Cat was essentially much more frequently hugging the perimeter where Crowder would be, and he could play higher and trap on ball handlers, whereas Jared Vanderbilt, who is the better rim protector of the two, could hang back closer to the rim, protect the rim on drives.
Better rebounder too.
Also a better rebounder, and could play that kind of free safety role. But I guess I would just emphasize about this team, they show out a ton. If you can beat them, if you can quickly turn the corner around those screens where they're going to try and trap ball handlers, all you have to do is beat them around that initial corner, and then you've always got a man advantage against this team. But they do it because it works. They are top 5 in the NBA in steals. They're top 5 in the NBA in blocks. They create a lot of chaos on the court, and it's a good method for them to turn defense into offense. And there could be teams where that mucks up the Suns for sure. There could be teams where Chris Paul or Devin Booker just struggle against traps against this team in a series. And then who does the pressure fall on once again to pick up the slack and make sure that you win a game? It's going to be DeAndre Ayton. It's going to be Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges to an extent too, but especially a guy like Ayton is going to be, again, just super, super important in a series like this.
I think that teams that have done that against the Suns have failed. Honestly, that's the type of defense the Nuggets played on the Suns last year, and I think the Suns will be capable of picking it apart. I also think that they shouldn't have done that against the Suns in the regular season if they were thinking about it being a possibility in the playoffs, because now Monty's going to have a book of plays that are prepared.
Well, and let's also, let's give Ayton some credit, because in the last game against the Timberwolves, which the Suns won, they did that where they put Jared Vanderbilt on DeAndre Ayton so that because they were thinking, okay, if Ayton wants to beat us,
killed him.
Yeah, exactly. They said if Ayton wants to beat us, let him beat us. We're going to trap Booker and see if they can even get it to him in the first place. And if they do, what can he do with it? What did he do with it? He had 35 and 14 in one of the best offensive games of his career, because Jared Vanderbilt,
excellent defensive game too. Yeah.
Because Jared Vanderbilt, try as he might, he's a player who is very close to my heart and is, but he's pretty much Mikal Bridges sized, and asking
he's 6'8", right?
Yeah, he's 6'8" and barely 200 pounds, and asking a guy like that to guard DeAndre Ayton is a recipe for disaster. Knowing Ayton's bag of tricks on the offensive end at this point when he catches the ball in the low post. So there you go.
The reason I thought it was bad to start is I just think we've seen too many teams ask DeAndre Ayton to beat them since last season, and it just doesn't work in their favor. I think the best recipe to beat the Suns, if we're being honest, is taking Chris Paul out of the game as much as possible, even if that means allowing Devin Booker to go off.
Well, that's
what the Bucks
That's
did.
exactly what the Bucks did. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can take Chris Paul out of it, and none of these teams can, like ultimately, I think if the Timberwolves, because the Timberwolves have one thing the Clippers don't this year, and that's Patrick Beverley. And if Patrick Beverley, if he guards Devin Booker the whole series, I think the Suns will probably be fine. If they try to use Patrick Beverley to completely take Chris Paul out of it, for one, Patrick Beverley might actually foul out in that case. I do worry about Patrick Beverley doing something shady, I'll just be honest, and that's probably one of my bigger concerns if we end up against the Timberwolves in the first round. But if they switch over to try and take Chris Paul out of the game as much as possible, I think that will make it more of an interesting series. But I don't know. I just think this matchup is pretty bad for the Timberwolves, ultimately.
Yeah,
top to bottom, the Suns have the right defenders to play this kind of team. And I think Karl Anthony Towns, because what the Suns do on the other end of the ball, we should say defensively, what the Suns do is the same thing essentially that you just talked about the Timberwolves doing. They tend to put Jay Crowder on Karl Anthony Towns in when he's up around setting screens, and that forces him to, if he goes into the post and they want to throw the lob pass, then he'll front and they can switch DeAndre Ayton onto him in the post, and then you have Jared Vanderbilt trying to cut on the other end. It's just not the best situation for them. Offensively, I think you can force, if Karl Anthony Towns hits a bunch of threes, like that's probably their best advantage offensively.
By the way.
But I think there is a scenario where they go a little bit smaller. Karl Anthony Towns is essentially the lone big on the floor. They just don't really have the shooting to make that scary.
Yeah.
If you try to take DeAndre Ayton as much out of the paint as possible, then I think you could try to do some interesting things offensively. I just don't think they have the right personnel to really take advantage of the Suns.
I think you nailed it. I think when I look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're a team with a ton of potential that has the right ideas but the wrong personnel. And you were just talking about Cat. People don't know, I think, that the Timberwolves lead the league in 3-point attempts. They're taking over 40 of them a game. Anthony Edwards takes over 8 of them a game. Malik Beasley takes over 8 of them a game. Cat takes 5. D'Angelo Russell takes, I think, 7 or 8. They chuck them up, but they're only 13th in 3-point percentage. And some of the ancillary guys around them, Jaden McDaniels, who's a really valuable defender, still not really enough of a shooter, as good of a shooter as he needs to be to log a lot of minutes in the playoffs, to log, say, 25, 30 minutes in the playoffs. Jared Vanderbilt, again, really talented defensive player, not an offensive spacing threat whatsoever. And so the whole reason the Suns can even play Cat to kind of double him, if you will, the way that they do against Giannis, where they have one guy front and one guy in the back, is because Jared Vanderbilt, they know exactly where he's going to be. He's going to be hugging the rim, and he's not going to be anywhere else. So even if you don't have eyes on him, you know right where he's going to be on offense because he's so limited. If the Timberwolves come back next year and they start shooting, like they launch this many threes and they're hitting them at a 40% clip, then watch out, because they're going to be at the top of the Western Conference. That's the way I'd put it. They have they have a defensive identity, and they have the potential, at least, they have already one offensive superstar and they have the potential for 2 offensive superstars. So if they just improve their shooting a little bit, they've got the right ideas. With where they are right now, I think they can definitely give the Suns a series. I don't think they're going to have the execution down enough to beat them at the end of the day. I think that's the way the cards are going to fall.
So the Timberwolves and the Clippers, if things stay the way they are going to play each other first. And then the loser of that game will go on to play the winner of the Pelicans versus the Spurs, and then that team will end up playing the Suns. So if the Suns were to play the Timberwolves or the Clippers, whichever team loses when they play each other would have to win the next game, and then they end up playing, which I think, to be honest, I think that makes it more likely to be the Clippers if I were to just guess at this point. But anything can happen in that series. And once the Suns actually know who the opponent is going to be, we will break it down as best as we can, as long as we can, in fact, because that will be, I have a feeling that will be a very long podcast.
Maybe even with a guest, depending on which team it is.
Maybe even with a guest, exactly. So we'll be back soon to talk about that. The playoffs are not that far away. This season ends in a week. You know, we're not that far away from the NBA playoffs, but we appreciate you guys listening. We'll get into this a lot more later. If you want some extra content from us, you can sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/thetimeline. We have the Overtimeline podcast, which is an additional podcast, which will be released midweek. And we are doing the last, in fact, playback watch party of the season this Friday. You could join us for that as well.
The regular season.
Be back. The regular season, exactly. We'll be back very soon. We appreciate you guys.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.